Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I am Dave Boliek, and I'm a candidate for state auditor. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here and let you know about me and answer questions and hopefully fill you in on everything that I know, that I represent, and what I want to try to do in Raleigh and what I've done in the past. That makes me think I'm worthy of going to Raleigh to represent you and the other taxpayers in North Carolina as the state auditor. I came from Raleigh today. I was working on some campaign stuff today. Came here from Raleigh. Had a good drive. Let me start by saying that I do owe, and I think everybody in North Carolina, and I would say particularly the Republican Party as a whole, owes an extreme debt of gratitude to all of the candidates that ran in the original primary for auditor. I mean, and I mean no disrespect to any individual in years past, but in point of fact, we haven't had that great group of candidates to run for state auditor in the past. And this year, we had, in large part, I believe, because of the failures of the elected auditor, Beth Wood, even prior to her hit and run accident, and prior to the fact that she was indicted for misusing state property, even prior to that, she has failed and had failed the taxpayers of North Carolina because of the way she ran the audit department. Now I will say, and many folks tell me, and I agree because I followed her office, she did some reasonably good audits when she did them. My problem with her, quite frankly, was what she cherry picked and decided to audit, and frankly what she decided not to audit. And you know, I've gotten to be good friends with Charles Dingy, who ran, and Charles and I have talked at length about a lot of things in the auditor's office. I think we owe a debt of gratitude to Charles, who got into the race early on. I've gotten to know him very well and trade texts and phone calls with him weekly and sometimes twice a week since March the 5th. Jeff Tart, a state senator out in Charlotte, he's a 3-term state senator. We owe him a debt of gratitude for getting in the race. And Jim Key, another gentleman from Greensboro, who was a city councilman. We, as taxpayers and North Carolinians, owe him a debt of gratitude for getting in the race as well. And my opponent, Jack Clark, indeed is owed a debt of gratitude. I have a lot of love and respect for Jack. He and I've gotten to know each other on the campaign trail, so I don't have anything negative to say about Jack at all. It's raised the profile of the auditor's race. And goodness gracious, more people have talked about the state auditor's race this year than probably ever before, and I think it's a great thing. So I'm going to start with that and then tell you a little bit about myself. I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ that I developed 18 years ago. I was born and raised a Christian, but really did not have that full personal relationship until I went on a church retreat 18 years ago, found Christ in my soul, and I try every day to walk in his footsteps. Even though I fail, I continue to wake up every morning praying and trying to do the best I can. I'm married for the last 28, now almost 29 years, to the beautiful woman that's in my TV ads. That's the 60-second cut. There's a 30-second cut as well. But I've been married to her. We have 4 great kids, and you see all of them in the video. My 2 older boys, thankfully, are now off the family payroll, so we're really excited about that. They're working and making their way, and I have, of course, a younger son and a daughter who's great. Our daughter's homeschooled, and she'll be finishing up high school this year, and so we're excited about what the future holds for her. My background, a couple things. First, I'm a graduate of UNC Chapel Hill, and I'm going to go back to that in a minute. I also earned a law degree from Campbell University and a master's in business administration from Campbell University. after school, what I did with those degrees, I started in government contracting. I actually ran a government contract business where we had employees that I was responsible for all across the country. I ran military family housing in San Diego, California, and I ran janitorial contracts at Fort Bragg and Fort Hood. And so I've had direct experience, particularly even as a young man, managing large numbers of people. I decided I wanted to use my law degree and became a prosecutor. And so I worked in Cumberland County as a prosecutor. I've been in traffic court and I've handled murder cases. So I know how to investigate something. I know how to take it from start to finish and get a result. I've also worked in private practice. One of the greatest honors of my life is being what's called a PBA attorney, which is Police Benevolent Association, where I've represented law enforcement officers on use of force cases. So when law enforcement officers in my region use force in an instant, I'm the one they call to defend them and to make sure that they shouldn't be charged. I've been able to keep a lot of officers from being charged when even prosecutors sometimes feel like they might should. So that's been one of the great joys of my life. I've also owned and run businesses. I've signed the front of a paycheck, and those of you in here who sign a paycheck on the front know I got the gray hair to show for it, because we who do that have the gray hair to show for it. So I've managed people. So let me say, why in the world would a guy who seems to have it all together with a great family want to run for state auditor? And that's a reasonably good question, because I know it's going through your mind. Several years ago now, about 5 years ago, I went back to my alma mater. I told you I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill. I felt like it was it had gone way too far liberal. It still remains to be a very liberal campus, even though taxpayers across the state of North Carolina fund the university. And even at its best, I think most North Carolinians are actually right of center. I think it's a further majority than the media would like us to believe. But even if you accept that North Carolina is a purple state, that means that half of the money that goes from our General Assembly to the university comes from conservatives. So I believe and still believe that my grandchildren should feel like they can go to the university, and they should not be able to should not have to hide their ideology, and should be able to learn and be comfortable in that environment. So I took it on and became chairman of the board at UNC. What have we done? We've actually made some movement at UNC. It's a slow moving ship. It's turning a battleship 5 degrees at a time, but we're making progress. I started with the budget. Most people don't believe me when I tell them, but it is in fact true. My first day as a trustee, that what they really want you to ask when you get into those kind of jobs, and Mr. Director, you know this, they really want you to ask, where's the liquor, right? And how do I get my free field passes so I can go on the field at football games? That's what they want you to ask as a trustee. I didn't go into it with that attitude. I started asking real questions. Found out that the university was running 16 separate budgets to spend $4.4 billion a year. Not 16 parts to one budget, but 16 separate individual budgets. Now, I told you I was a prosecutor. I had a judge tell me one time when I was a young guy that just because something looks stupid doesn't mean it's not on purpose. And I believe that was on purpose. So I, along with my counterpart, a gentleman by the name of John Pryor, who also was in that orientation session, set out to change that. We said, we're going to change this, because every municipality and every county in the state of North Carolina is required to have a forward-looking budget that projects the money and tells the citizens how that money is going to be spent. At the university level, it should be run the same way. We were able to get that under control, reform that budget process, and while we were doing it, we found a $100 million structural deficit. Shouldn't surprise anybody when you're running 16 separate budgets on a $4.4 billion spend. Tried to act like it was budget dust, and I, and along with the board, we led the effort to say, no, that's not budget dust. We're going to drill down on this. We brought in every department head, every dean, and said, we got to cut that budget your budget needs to be cut by 1.3 to 1.7%. Not from the increase that you would like to see, but from the bottom line of your budget. Now, you'd have thought that I'd have gone in there with a 9-foot machete, because I dare say that the budget needed to be cut 1.3 to 1.7%. But we did it. The administration did come along and help us. We pushed them down the road. We got it done, and now the university is running a surplus. That budget model has been now applied everywhere, including here at Elizabeth City State. Every university in the system now applies that budget system that we developed at Chapel Hill, and that was due to leadership from the board. The administration, I promise you, wouldn't have done it without the board pushing and making it happen. That's because we represent the taxpayers of the state of North Carolina, and we take that job very seriously, and did in the recent group that was put in. What else have we done? This time last year, it was last January, I put forward something called the School of Civic Life and Leadership. And what that was designed to do is to bring conservative professors onto campus at UNC Chapel Hill and to build a home for conservative students. Well, again, you'd have thought I'd have had a 9-foot machete in my hand when I dared announce the fact that we wanted to push that and make that a reality. I went on Fox News, they interviewed me after I introduced it, and I said, the purpose of this is to remedy what is, and I said, you know, quite frankly, there's not a shortage of liberal-leaning professors on campus. And this is an effort to try to remedy that. And me saying that, yeah, I mean, I just couldn't believe the fallout. I mean, it's fine with me, but just the faculty just went nuts. Well, they then took to the airwaves. They created a 501c4, which is a nonprofit group to do political activism. Governor Cooper formed an entire commission to study the governance of the university system because they said we were out of control. They said it would never happen. I'm here to tell you, last month we hired our dean. And so if I do nothing else in my public life but that, I feel like I've accomplished something for the people of North Carolina. It's going to be a model for all universities across the country. University of Texas, Ohio State, Tennessee, they've all called and want to know what the secret sauce is for our school, and we've shared that, and we're spreading the word. I'm very proud of that. That's moving the needle. It's 5 degrees at a time, but we're moving. We're going to have classes starting in the fall. I've also looked the woke left directly in the eye, and I've told the limousine liberals to their face, no to Nicole Hannah-Jones and the 1619 Project. Right.
Amen.
They tried to hire her at the university, tried to bring her in, caused a big kerfunkle at the national level. There was a group of 4 of us that put our foot down and said, absolutely no, this will not happen. We said no. We knew if she didn't get a unanimous vote, she wouldn't come. So we stood firm and said no to her. Why do I bring that up? I bring that up in the context of the state auditor's office because I really believe that these council of state positions really are about courage. And it's about putting people into those positions, electing people that have courage to stand up, take a stand when a stand needs to be taken, even in the face of intense pressure. I tell you the story about saying no to 1619 because I want you to know that I've done it. I've had the deputy sheriff in my driveway for 10 days because I had death threats. And you know, it's a small price to pay for doing the right thing. Sometimes you just got to do that. So, what in the world does the state auditor do? And again, the reason I wanted to do it is we experienced some success at the university level, and I feel like I can take that kind of success, build on it, and take it to the state auditor's office. Most people say, well, what in the world does the state auditor do? And why should it have any kind of attention at all? There's 3 basic things the state auditor does. Okay? First, what everybody in this room probably thinks that the state auditor does. Financial audits of agencies and institutions that are funded by the state. They also do compliance audits to make sure that those agencies and institutions are in compliance. That's what I call I call it sort of the routine, everyday job of the state auditor's office. And there's professionals in that office that accomplish that. But the general statutes authorize 2 additional types of audits. And that's where I think that a new state auditor with a new culture of getting things right for the state of North Carolina can really do the taxpayers some benefit. The first type of audit is an economy and efficiency audit, okay? That is where you take on the Board of Elections and election integrity. Election integrity across this state, and I owe a gratitude to Charles, and he and I have talked about this a lot. You know, I've taken up that banner as well, that election integrity is so important that the voters in this state are owed a look at our boards of elections, not only at the state level, but at the county level, particularly in the big 7 counties across the state of North Carolina, to make sure that our elections are fair and run above board. I pledge to do that as your state auditor. Also, I mean, can I get an amen that the DMV needs to be audited? Should it be that hard to get a driver's license in the state of North Carolina? Absolutely not. It really shouldn't be. That's efficiency and economy audits. That's where, and the real payoff in that is an auditor that not only goes in and takes a look at it, but comes back with solid recommendations that I am hopeful a state auditor will be able to give to Governor Robinson and to the legislature and say, here are some things you can do that we recommend. It gives them that platform to take action. The third type of audit is also something that I believe that our former elected state auditor failed at doing at every turn, and that is taking a look at program results, okay? And what I mean by that is, and where I want to take a look is when it comes to NGOs. That's the sort of the abbreviation that bureaucrats in up in Raleigh and in DC use for non-governmental organizations. What are those? Those are nonprofits that get state dollars in order to accomplish certain state actions. I do not know this for sure, but I do believe that these NGOs need to be audited top to bottom to make sure that people who are here illegally are not getting benefit from state taxpayer dollars. And I pledge to absolutely do that. We also have the opportunity to take a look at program results. There are, I mean, even with a $30 billion budget, you guys have got, there's a lot of programs out there that sort of routinely kind of get funded. And I think it's incumbent upon the state auditor to work with the legislature to take a look at programs and ask one simple question. It's really one question you ask in these program results audits, and that is, what's the ROI, what's the return on investment to taxpayers for this particular program? And if you can't show a return on investment to taxpayers, then the recommendation from the state auditor to Governor Robinson and to the General Assembly should be to defund that program, repurpose that money to fill potholes and build bridges and keep the state's economy moving. That, I believe, is why I think the auditor's office is become such an important kind of focus in this election, because we've got some we've had quality candidates on this campaign trail talking about these issues and pledging to do this, and we've not had that before. So I think it's incumbent upon you as voters to take a look, and let's put somebody up there. I believe I'm the right person to do it. I believe I've got the gray hair, the experience, the chutzpah, whatever you want to call it, the moxie and the willingness to go in there and take it on. I'm not a perfect candidate. I would not tell you that I'm a perfect candidate under any circumstances, but I'll tell you I can get it done. In this part of the speech, I'll leave you with one thought, and then I'm going to open it up for questions because I want to answer all your questions. I'll leave you with one thought, and that is, I told you that Roy Cooper and the Stein administration, he created this entire commission, spent, I don't know how much money he spent, but he spent some money out of his budget, to completely attack the governance system at the university level because of the activism that myself and others were demonstrating to make things happen. Okay? He's called me a far-right conservative who does nothing but meddle. That's his direct quote. Well, I wear that meddling as a badge of honor, because to me, the meddling that we've done is holding people accountable, asking tough questions, and standing up for what's right for everyday average North Carolinians. If you send me to Raleigh as your state auditor, I pledge to do that each and every day, and you ain't seen nothing yet. Okay? And I appreciate the opportunity. I'd love to take questions.
Before you take questions, real quick, I just want to go back up 1 second. Mr. Ward, Representative Ward,
Yes.
has to be in Camden GOP, so I just want to let everybody know that if he leaves, that's why. And I want to also introduce him, as well as Judge Moreland also is here tonight. I want you to know who's here
Judge,
to,
Your Honor, how are you doing?
to see you. Also, Chairman Nick Epp there from Gates County is here. You've also got some other Gates County folks over there. Chairman Bob Kirby from Chowan County is here. He is running for the national delegate position at the upcoming district conventions. If you guys are going to district conventions, please vote Bob Kirby, Chowan County. You also have Janice Craig back there, the president of the Northeast Carolina Republican Women, and Louise Brickhouse, the vice president of the Northeast Carolina Republican Women. Brad Kinsler, Chowan treasurer. Did I miss any of their officers from GOPs? I think I got everyone. Okay, I just wanted to see who, you've got a cross mix of everybody here. But,
so, I'm an open book.
Questions?
Ask me any questions. Yes, sir.
If you go to Raleigh, are you gonna be over other auditors?
So, the auditor's office has roughly 200 employees, okay? I think they're staffed at about 176 now, but I know there's some openings. There's been an issue with respect to all over the place of trying to get good people to come to work. But the staff is somewhere around 200 people. So yes, what the auditor does is manage those people in that office. And so I believe that we're gonna have to show some people the door who've been there a long time with Beth Wood, because we need a culture change in that office. I pledge to do that.
I was about to say, who's gonna check the checkers?
Well, first thing is we gotta start fresh. There's a lot of good people in that auditor's office that are everyday average auditors that come to work and they do their job and they're great. But that management has been tweaked up by Beth Wood and basically run by Roy Cooper, and they're gonna have to go. Because we're gonna have to start over with the management and set a new direction, a new strategic direction for that office. So yes, sir, I would be over them, and my job would be to manage and set a direction and set priorities. I don't mind telling you who I want to audit, because I've heard from the people of North Carolina who needs to be audited. We're gonna start with board elections, okay? We're gonna go to DMV and DOT, okay, and we're gonna look at these NGOs, and we're gonna look at state agencies and make sure that the people who are here illegally are not getting taxpayer benefits. We're gonna start with those three things, and we're gonna work down from there. I've already staked myself out, and I don't know what the results are gonna be. We may go in and find that these NGOs are all working above board, and if so, great. But if they're not, we're gonna change it, okay? I'm pretty sure we're gonna find there's some efficiencies we can find in DMV, for example. And I don't know about the Board of Elections. I don't wanna go in and say, well, I assume there's something there. I don't think that would be fair, but I do think there's been a lack of willingness to go in and take a look at it, and I will do that.
Dave. Go ahead, ladies first.
Yes, ma'am.
About 4 years ago, I had a city council person sit beside me and tell me that a sitting city council person owed just under $20,000 in electric bills through the city of Elizabeth City. We have our own electric department through the city. The next January, that became illegal. So it would be illegal for a city or an elected official to accept oh, I just lost the word, but
Free
anyway.
electricity.
Free electricity. But I don't know if you know this, but, there is a statute saying that, electric bills through municipalities, or local governments, those records cannot be accessed by public records request. It didn't used to be that way. 30 years ago, it was in the paper when somebody, elected didn't pay their bill. Would you be in favor of that, legislation being removed?
I'd have to look at the public records part, but I can tell you the state auditor doesn't need any reason or probable cause to go get those records.
And I realize that, but unfortunately, you're gonna be covering a large state, and sometimes the ground people can help a little. I've got the spreadsheet showing the exact figure. I couldn't get the names, but I got a list of, the number of people who were delinquent in a 30, 60, 90, 120 day, and that exact figure was on there. But they didn't put it in the 120 day file. It was in a 30 day file,
So I'm not ever gonna lie to you.
okay?
So I didn't anticipate that question. So I don't know
You
the
don't want the
answer
right
to
answer,
that,
that's right.
but I think that is something that definitely, I totally get your point in terms of public records and whether that should be. I would have to think about that, but I'm gonna give you my card with my cell phone, and you gonna text me your number, and I'm gonna call you and give you an answer.
Okay,
to
and
what I
we're gonna
think.
be starting to contact, or I'm gonna be starting to contact with some friends in other counties, cause we don't wanna think it's just coming from one section.
Right.
That we think this law, it wasn't on the books until, I think, actually, Pasquotank County was the first one to put it on the books, now it's statewide.
Yeah, I believe if a politician just gives you an answer on a complex
That's
question
okay.
like that, they're not doing you the right service.
And I appreciate that.
I'm never gonna lie. Yes, sir.
Dave, one statement, two questions.
Sure.
The statement is, I think I've learned more about the NC auditor's position and job in the last 15 minutes than I've known all my life. Appreciate that. Thank you for the education. Two questions. One, you've chosen not to denigrate your primary opponent. I appreciate that. But I need to hear at least one thing of why you and not him, and then a follow-up behind that.
Sure, great, good question. So, I am, gonna stand by, Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, and plus, I don't have anything bad to say about Jack.
Good, good.
I just don't. I mean, I gotta be honest with everybody, and I'm not gonna ever try, maybe I misstate something, but I try to be honest all my life. Jack and I got to be great friends on the campaign trail. He is a really nice guy. I mean, we ate lunch together, and we would eat dinner together, and we would text each other about funny things that may have happened during one of these events or something like that. So I just don't have a negative thing. He and his wife Nicole have become friends. They're expecting a baby in July. I mean, they're really good people. But differentiation is a little bit different. I would say it starts with the gray hair. It starts with experience. It starts with, and he is 32 years old and I'm 56. Okay, and I've been punched in the gut. I've made some mistakes. I've raised a family. I've got 2 kids that have left the house. I think that's important when you're in a leadership position. I also think it's important to have hired people, and I don't believe Jack has ever hired anybody. I don't believe he's ever had to manage anybody, and I've hired people, managed people. I've had to let people go. And anybody in here who's had to let people go, no, that's not an easy thing to do either, but it's something that you get more seasoned and you get more rational with those kind of decisions the more experience you have having done that, okay? I think, look, let me say, myself or Jack Clark is so far ahead of the social justice warrior that Roy Cooper and Josh Stein have got in that office right now. It's not even funny. So either one of us is gonna be a fine choice to run that state auditor's office. And I would not pretend to say any different, because she's a problem. She's a problem. She was the chair of the Wake County Commission and wouldn't approve a budget one time because they wouldn't raise taxes enough for her liking.
So question number 2, the incumbent, is that who you'll be running against? Whoever wins this primary, is that who you'll be facing, or the Democrats putting up someone else?
So another good question. So it is Jessica Holmes is the incumbent. She was appointed after Beth Wood was indicted and resigned. And again, I think it's also important, and a lot of times I forget when I'm in here talking about myself and sort of trying to let you know a little bit about myself and a little bit about what the auditor does, that one overarching issue in this auditor's race, which is another reason why I think there's a lot of attention on it, is we gotta bring some integrity back to that office. And let's face it, the last elected auditor in North Carolina was indicted, okay, for misusing state property. I mean, of all the people in the state who misuse state property, the state auditor, I mean, come on, right? So we've got a lot of work to do to try to bring credibility back to that office. I think Ms. Holmes, I'm sure she's a perfectly nice, wonderful, warm human being. I'm sure she's the wrong person for that job. Yes, ma'am.
Well, your opponent in the past are using your voting record against you.
Yeah,
And
I heard that.
yes, I'm sure you
I
have.
heard that.
And so,
He's become a good friend of mine too.
but it's actually now circulating again for these primaries,
And it's a fair question.
and it's a fair question.
It is a fair question. I'm glad you asked. So I am a former Democrat who's a Republican now. I'm not unlike a lot of Eastern North Carolinians who were conservative and registered as Democrat. Never really thought a whole lot about trying to run for office. And quite frankly, I've learned a lot on the primary campaign trail. It's been eye-opening of how important primaries are and primary decisions were. I consider myself a pretty smart guy, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't think I've got too big a head, although my wife thinks I do sometimes. But I do think I'm pretty smart. But my realization of how important primaries are has really come full circle by running. And I always supported Republican candidates in the general election. And I was working in Cumberland County, which is a very heavily Democrat county, and never really thought about it like I maybe should have. But this certainly has shown a light on how important primaries are. I will tell you that my voting record gets circulated, and that's fine. It is what it is. I mean, I knew what it was when I filed, so it's not like didn't figure that would show itself. But I will say this. People aren't gonna say I'm not conservative. And you don't hear that. You may hear the voting record, but you do not hear that I'm not conservative. And I've proven that. And I will say this. I told you the story of and why I tell that story about voting no for Nicole Hannah-Jones and the 1619 Project. And those of you who may not know what the 1619, that's the Bible, that's the birth of critical race theory. That's the attempt by a New York Times newspaper reporter to rewrite our nation's history. I don't agree with that. I think it's a fiction, and our history should not be rewritten by a New York Times newspaper reporter. I will tell you in that vote, six lifelong Republicans voted yes.
Good grief.
Including a former state senator.
Did they know anything about the 1619? Had they read it and studied it?
Oh yeah, these people are lawyers.
So they knew how
They're
false
lawyers. They put on that board. They know they're very intelligent
They
people.
knew how funny that
They
was.
knew what the 1619 Project was. They voted yes. So I will tell you that while it is a good question, and I answer it everywhere I go because I get asked, and I'm glad to answer that question. Okay, but I will tell you that while, yes, I think being a lifelong Republican is important, and it's an important issue when you're running to represent the party and to represent the people in North Carolina. But I don't think lifelong Republican is the only qualification that makes you a good Republican and a good conservative for that office.
Obviously, those six weren't very good
Well,
Republicans.
that's a fact.
Right?
That's an absolute fact.
Were they
You
really
look at it.
Republicans?
So that vote was a 9-4 vote, and I was one of the 4 no's, and we knew that if there wasn't a unanimous vote, that there was a very high likelihood she would
She
not
was
come,
very
and we were gonna
upset.
stand up. We want to stand up for what's right, even though we were threatened with a lot of stuff from a lot of people at the university, and I don't want to go into what I was threatened with. But I will tell you, 6 lifelong Republicans voted yes. So that should tell you that, you know, I'm just gonna tell you where I come from.
They got their passes to get on the field, that's what it
Well,
was.
it may be, yes, sir, and I've accused them of that. But I am who I am, and I'm very proud of myself and how I stand on issues and the courage I think I have to take things on. Yes, ma'am.
So obviously this ain't gonna get done tonight, but Pasquotank County has been our Elizabeth City, been on the LGC list twice in 5 years. We're still 2 audits behind and nothing
I know,
is
I
being
saw
done.
that.
So, is your office gonna work with the LGC to try to help, or are we stuck with the LGC?
Well, the state auditor sits on the LGC,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and along with the state treasurer, and I think the Secretary of State is the other member of the Council of State that sits on that. So what you have is, at least from the auditor spot, and that's who I followed, you have just inaction. You know, I've accused her, I think correctly, of not being up to the job. And you probably may not get the particular news up here, in Elizabeth City, but the, Durham County Public Schools, okay? They have a $60+ million financial mess where they have a shortfall and they don't have the money. And they ended up firing their superintendent, and the board is all in an uproar. And they had teachers and staff walk out and cause students to have to miss class. And I've called on our current auditor to show up on the front doorstep and audit those books, because the school board and the administration in Durham will not answer the question. Okay, they will not answer what's going on. That would be where I have proposed an auditor strike force for those types of issues, where you can go in and take some immediate action to let the public know, because I think pressure from the public moves things, and if the auditor's shining light on it, you can get things done. I think the same thing applies to the LGC. I think you have, again, it's all about courage. It's all about saying, look,
You would try to send somebody from the LGC or your,
I think you send them from your office. I think you send it from the auditor's office,
So it
not
goes-
the LGC.
go and.
I think if they're that far behind, I think it's time for the auditor to step in. Period. That's
need
called
something.
leadership.
We need something.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. One thing that bothers me, and I'm a sitting county commissioner.
Yes, sir.
I just had to, our commission just had to stroke a $15,000 change to our budget to cover the cost of this special election. This is Chowan County, which geographically is the smallest county in the state. It's easily multiplied by 100 because of the 100 counties. It's $1.5 million. The reason these elections cost so much, though, is they're not election days anymore. They're election
Weeks.
week and a half,
17
Thank you.
days.
17 days.
2 weeks and a half.
17 days.
But is there any way that in the position of auditor, you can rein this in under the old waste, fraud, and abuse? Because it's gotten way out of hand.
Well, I actually brought that up with a couple of with one of the lieutenant governor candidates, and talked to him about that. Because I think that fits under efficiency and economy audits.
It does.
And I think that the recommendation, and maybe a recommendation I don't know what the General Assembly wants to do on early voting. 17 days seems to be a lot to me. I think it's a lot on the counties to administer, and really.
It's unfunded mandate too.
It is, and it's a lot on the candidates. You know,
Yes.
again, I'm learning a lot being on the candidate. This is my first foray into elected office. Y'all know that. If you know I was a registered Democrat, you know it's the first time that I was a registered Democrat. I think that, you know, it's hard on the candidates, and I think it's hard on the voting public.
Hard on the tax dollars, man.
It is, it's tough on, and I'll get to that, but it's tough on the voters and the candidates, because you'll have situations where, you know, it's a big state, it's hard to get everywhere. And you may have a situation, and I was in this situation, I spoke at a group, and show of hands of who's already voted, well, 90% of the people in the room had already voted, and it was still 8-9 days before the election, which is good for the Republican Party to get out and vote early, because the Democratic Party's been really good at voting early. And again, I would say, to your question, I think I can win in November, all right? 30% of the registered voters in North Carolina are Republican, 33 are Democrat, and 37% are unaffiliated. I can tell you that across this state, I have been, in large part, welcomed with open arms to the Republican Party. Not by everybody, and that's fine. It's not gonna be unanimous, but I have been welcomed, because I come here and I'll go anywhere and talk about who I am to anybody that asks, because I'm putting myself out there, and you guys ought to interview me for the job. And if you don't like what you hear, the answer ought to be, no, I'm not gonna hire you, right? But I'm willing to do it, and I've been out here because I think it's very important. There are some candidates that just, they don't wanna go everywhere. It's hard to get to this part of the state, you know, and to your point, you know, the 17 days of early voting, you gotta focus on where the majority of, where there's numbers going to the polls. But, you know, and that's just being honest. But yeah, I think we could cut it, I think it could be reined in, I think it could save a lot of money. I think we could save a lot of money.
He has a lot more sway.
I think what you can do is audit it and give a recommendation. I think where the auditor fails is when the auditor doesn't give a solid set of recommendations and rationale for why. If you're gonna do an audit without a rationale and without some recommendation, you're wasting your time.
I was on the Board of Elections when they had the first one stop voting ever. And I was on it during the 2008 election, which was one of the largest when Obama was elected. Now it's totally crazy. They're open till 7 o'clock every night. And the county commissioners ought to say, okay, this is the amount of money you get. And so they don't have to be open until 7.
Somebody can take us to court, though, over the law that says that we have to provide that access. The law needs to be changed.
There's a lot that can be done, but I think 17 days, and I think there's a lot of legislators that think 17 days.
It's very excessive.
And that includes the weekends.
It's just too much.
It is.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a question to go back to auditing the Board of Elections. Now, when you say audit the Board of Elections, you are indicating that it would be an audit of the County Board of Commissioners and their funding of the local.
Well, not the
Board of Elections.
commissioners, but the Board of Elections board.
Right. But the local Board of Elections doesn't really control their budget. They get their budget from the county.
Well, what I'm proposing is not,
Yeah.
routine financial audit is one thing. What I'm proposing is program results / efficiency and economy. What's going on with our elections? Are
Sure.
votes being counted correctly? Are the processes and procedures correct? Because there's a lot of distrust across the state of North Carolina and across this country when it comes to election integrity. And I think the auditor sits in a unique seat to be able to take a look at that and answer the question. I don't know whether there's hanky-panky going on, and I don't wanna presuppose that there is. But as a state auditor, I think I should go in, because I've heard it over and over and over again as I travel across the state, that people are concerned about election integrity. So it's more than financial.
Right, in our case, I think the audit really needs to be down on the county and how they're funding the local Board of Elections. My impression of Gates County is we have a good Board of Elections, but the county, especially the Board of Commissioners in particular, are very much out to get rid of many members of the Board of Elections so they can have more under their thumb and their control. So they've been holding up, and they give them the funding at the very last moment. So for like example, right now, our local Board of Elections has it's $5,500 in debt. But but that's money that the county's supposed to cover. And since it's $5,500 in debt, the Board of Elections has been telling the county, well, we can't do anything for this runoff election because we're already running a deficit. You need to pay this off before we can go and fund this. So this goes back to what he's saying about
Unfunded mandate.
having the unfunded mandate. So I would highly encourage audit of the counties in order to get into the Board of Elections.
Well, with respect to accuracy
Right.
of vote counts, in respect to processes and procedures, and are these machines working correct, are they counting correct?
Yeah.
I think you start with the big seven counties. That seems to be where the problem is.
Right.
Because you're waiting at the last second for Wake County and Durham County in every single election. And I don't think it's right that they should always be last and come in with tons of votes
Yeah.
I mean, I just question that.
Sure.
Why they hold back. You know, but your point's well taken. Yeah.
When you were talking about Crook Raspberry and the 1619 projects, I was wondering if the state auditor's office, can check on where DEI has had a heavy hand and it shouldn't even be part of the conversation.
Yes, the auditor can, and I will tell you this, because it's not part of my normal speech, because we only started it 10 days ago maybe, and I did an interview about it today, and that is, as part of that 5-degree turn at the university system, I did have to step down, well, I didn't have to, but I stepped down as chair of the whole board in order to run for office, because I couldn't put enough time into that job, running a statewide campaign. But I did maintain chairmanship of budget, finance, and infrastructure at the university. And 10 days, well, it was our last meeting, just this past meeting, the March meeting. We have basically indicated and we're committed to taking DEI out of that budget. Somebody's gotta be first. I believe, and I said it to a reporter, they didn't quote me on this part, but they did quote me, the News and Observer did quote me correctly as saying that I believe that DEI has been the most divisive thing in higher education in modern history.
Absolutely.
I absolutely believe that it is, and I'm gonna stand by that. And I gave another interview today saying that it's my intention to request, and I asked our CFO at the university to give us a breakdown. And it's not gonna be an easy thing to peel out, but I wanted an initial breakdown of how much we're spending on DEI efforts. And my intent is to attempt at our next meeting to repurpose those dollars for student wellness and mental health counseling. Because I think that's more important. I think we get a better return on investment. I think this DEI stuff is a bunch of garbage, and I also think that it's just a bunch of bureaucrats sitting around not doing anything. And that's my personal opinion. I'm not speaking from the whole board on that. I'm speaking from me. That's what I personally believe. But yes, the auditor can do that and take a look at it and let you know and let the legislature know. I believe the legislature may take this up in the short session. I believe this is gonna happen. Did it in Florida, did it in Texas, and it's showing results already in both of those states. I do believe that our legislature may be poised to go ahead and do it. At our school, at the school that I'm working for right now in terms of serving as a trustee, we believe we needed to rip the Band-Aid off quickly, so we did it at our last meeting to start that discussion. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
All right. I heard that illegals can get a license, and that's understandable because they have to work. But,
Or they get an ID.
right, they get an ID, and, that's one of the requirements for voting now, too. So illegal supposedly can go that, if he has an ID, and that's right.
Yeah, in fact, I talked to Jim Womack about this issue this week because I think he's working on that. Gentleman out of Sanford that runs a election integrity group, that he's working on that. And I think that is, I hope that's not a loophole, but it certainly appears that it could be a loophole. I don't have the answer on how to fix that, but I think it's a well-stated question that needs to be looked into.
It'd be
like a color-coded license or some sort of code. DMV should be.
Well, y'all have to be a citizen to vote, in my opinion.
Well, you're not supposed to be able to work.
Yes, sir.
On that question, I mean, if you go on the Board of Elections website and look at the list of valid IDs that have been approved, it's not just the driver's license. I mean, it can be just about your library card or.
It's kind of ridiculous.
Sad.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it really is. That's my opinion too. It's kind of ridiculous. I think we need to share that thing. You can go to the Board of Elections and get an ID.
Yes, but they really promote that here.
All right, well, I hope I've answered your question. I know that there are those who wonder whether I'm up to the task. Yes, ma'am.
One more, we promised Captain Jameson Brogy that we'd ask you what your thoughts are on the REACH Act.
Oh, yeah. So, part of our School of Civic Life and Leadership is to instill basic civic education for our college graduates. I believe that it's incumbent that people who are citizens in this country know our founding documents. They need to know the Declaration of Independence. They need to know the Constitution of the United States. They need to understand what it took for people to have courage, our founding fathers to have courage to stand up and take that. I say this all the time, in with respect to those documents and what those documents basically represent. You know, I say, why in the world should small groups of people really be paid attention to? And the primary reason is because they're the only ones who ever changed the world. There were 55 signers of the Declaration of Independence, 39 signers of the United States Constitution. That's not a lot of individuals. There were 12 disciples of Jesus Christ. Tell me that those small groups didn't change the world. Our next generations need to understand that, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
I got one more, I gotta run, I work nights.
Thank you.
As a real shout out though, if anybody's interested, in Gates County, we're actually having a Frederick Douglass presentation on 18 May. If you want information, just talk to Christina. She can give it
We'll
to
be
you.
promoting it, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Pleasure to meet
Thanks for the
you.
information.
Did you bring any signs with you that we could put out for you?
I got 3. Not left. I had to.
We gotta get him some
I've ordered
donations.
a lot.
That's
I've
the only
ordered.
thing I was gonna ask for.
Well, I've ordered new ones, and they're coming in. So, but I have 3. We had to
Well, I
order
often
new
come
ones.
to Raleigh. If I can meet you there sometime, I'll get some and
Well,
bring
we're
them
gonna
back to
send
these
people
folks.
up. I've got your
Okay,
number now.
okay.
You're in bad shape because I got your number now. His name is Jack Clark. No, he's a Republican, and he's running primary. This is for the special runoff on the 14th of May. Yes, sir. Really nice guy.
This is sort of a personal issue for you. Where do you stand on social issues? Abortion,
So-
LGBT?
I personally like Florida's law when it comes to abortion. I think there needs to be, I think with rape, incest, and help of the mother, I think there needs to be particular care taken in that arena. But I also stand with President Trump that I think it's a states' rights issue. We as the Republican Party, and I consider myself a very proud member of the Republican Party. We as a Republican Party, and I go across the state, and I've been from one end to the other, and we talk, ad nauseum about needing more states' rights and the 10th Amendment. And I just don't agree with some people at the national level who've come out and sort of attacked, for lack of a better word, President Trump's announcement yesterday that it's a states' rights issue. What's wrong with that? We're perfectly capable in the state of North Carolina to govern ourselves on the abortion issue. And we want more, we as a state and voters that I talk to across the state want more authority in the states. So I think that it's incumbent upon us as North Carolinians to set the tone and decide as a people what those rules are gonna be and what the law is gonna be with respect to abortion. So I personally like the Florida law. That's where I come down. I like viability as a, 6 weeks, I think is right. I think that may be something we could get passed. I don't know that we could get a complete ban passed. So I'm also pragmatic. I think that we should try to, again, I've said it 3 times, sometimes you gotta turn the battleship a little bit at a time, all right? But I personally am more in line with Florida's law. And I think there are legislators that tried to get there and just weren't able to quite get there, but did get to the 14-week standard in North Carolina, which is the law as it stands today. Other social issues like what?
The LGBT community, you know, the organization.
Oh, well, let's all get in the rowboat and agree that men should play men's sports and women should play women's sports.
That's
I
right.
mean, that's just normal,
That's
right?
what I was asking.
I don't
Very much
understand
common
that
sense.
mess. I got no use for that.
You're trying to make him. Your best friend?
People voted governor. People voted against.
He does. Unless the court rules against the legislature. I don't know what that particular situation is. But the court has ruled against the legislature. All right, thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
really
Thank you.
appreciate y'all.